T.Wizz.J on the beat. Full kicking it live.
Tyler Parker from Conway, South Carolina, formerly T.Wizz.J. Name that I go by today is TDP, the percussionist. Wow, brings back a whole lot of memories just looking at some of the things that we've done over the years. The music that really truly inspired me more so than anything, I have to say it was probably like the Motown era. My mother used to have like albums from the Shy Lights, from LTD, and a lot of those albums I actually ultimately inherited. And the old Michael Jackson, Jackson 5 albums. I'm still remembering the Jackson 5 Flying High album that actually is in my collection right now that I inherited from my mother. So those were some of the music types that actually inspired me. And even growing up in South Carolina, my grandfather used to have a juke joint. And we used to have a machine in there. It was called a piccolo, and the piccolo used to play 45s. And I remember you used to actually put a quarter in, and that quarter would give you, two singles, two plays of that 45. And a lot of the music back then, Betty Wright, a lot of the old stuff, I still listen to today, and that's actually what inspired me more so than anything to even get into the whole thing of music. I mean, my whole family, was just musically inclined. And it was a part of our culture, part of our upbringing, and just growing up in the backwoods of South Carolina. I guess I call it the sticks in Conway. We really truly wasn't a whole lot to do on the weekends other than just be up in my grandparents' juke joint, and often looking at like Harlem Nights as an example. I guess I was probably an earlier version of Quick, because I sold the half pints of LTD and Seagram's Gin, but all of that was centered around that culture that was going on in Conway at the time and in South Carolina, and that's what really inspired me more so than anything when it came down to this whole thing with music. So back in the early 80s, my mother actually got a job here in Richmond, really with the Federal Reserve Bank here, and she brought me up. And it was really truly at that point when I came up and we moved to Westover Terrace Apartments that I met Jay, and I knew he was really deep into the whole music thing, and that was really where my first inspiration came from as far as hip hop was concerned, because he just had this really, really vast collection. And we would often have this competition as a result of that. He was collecting a lot of profile albums, and I got into the whole Tommy Boy scene. And I think the one thing that really truly pushed me more so than anything at the time, I probably have to say, was probably Pac Jam. And I remember it like it was like yesterday. It's back in South Carolina, and I remember it, and it's in my collection right now. I actually had purchased this Pac Jam 12-inch. And the unique thing about the Pac Jam 12-inch is that all of the vinyl back then was black. But this particular 12-inch was green. It was clear, see-through green. And it was a remix of Pac Jam. So I purchased it, and again, opened it up, and at the time, Tommy Boy used to actually put pictures of all of their albums that were getting ready to come out, and I never forget it. They actually had the item numbers where you could order them through Tommy Boy or do whatever, and I would always kind of track the whole Tommy Boy history of albums that was out there. So Jay and I kind of came up with this competition. We used to always say, well, the better artists were actually on profile, and I would always say, well, no, the better artists were always on Tommy Boy. And we would go and see who could collect more of the different, types of music coming out on those labels. I was, collecting Tommy Boy, and he was collecting profile. But needless to say, even to this day, it's really a challenge to even decide who actually won that battle, because it was so much music that was out there with both of those, Tommy Boy and Profile. So from that point on, it went to me getting actually involved with Albert Hill Middle School. So, and Albert Hill at the time was the only middle school that actually had a band here. And I decided I wanted to play saxophone. What I really truly wanted to do was percussion. But I said I was going to kind of pick up an instrument and just kind of see what I could do. And from that point, played the sax, but I used to always hear that percussion section for all, so for all through my time at Albert Hill, I played the saxophone. But I was kind of moving towards the whole percussion side of things. And when I moved over to Huguenot High School at that time, I was really truly deeply into the whole thing of just being a part of a band. So I got into the band and became a drummer at that point. Well, at that time, that was really when the whole electronic thing was starting to really kind of kick off. And Mattel came up with these Sensonics. And we had paper routes at that time. And I never forget it. The Sensonics was somewhere in the neighborhood of about 100, I think maybe 200, $200. And coming through on the paper route at the time was $200 was a lot of money. But somehow I managed to save up enough money to purchase my own set of Sensonics. And my whole thought process of actually production and percussion changed with the Sensonics. I mean, it was a monotone sound, but it was unique at the time. It was electronic. Because the way Mattel was pushing them is that they were pushing them as though they were a toy. And but for me, I was looking at it from the perspective of it being something totally different, something bigger, especially considering back in the days that, coming back from Albert Hill and running into Jay, and we'd be on the back of the bus at times, and I was always the human beatbox. Jay would come up with the rhymes, and it just kind of flowed into this whole thought process of where I was at the time with my music. And collecting all of the albums, and then from that point, I got fairly proficient at programming, the Sensonics, and wow, that's interesting. I look at these pads. I'd even gone to the point of actually getting my own drumsticks, because the way Mattel was pushing it was that they were pushing it that you could play, these pads like you would, play a regular, snare drum or bass drum. But what I later realized is that it wasn't that easy to play the pad. It's a whole lot easier to actually program it. And I got pretty proficient at doing it and programming it. And so my whole history of the whole electronic sound and hip hop actually came from this. And it just, progressed and morphed into a whole, different thought process of how I went about producing my beats and developing my tracks. Jay, myself, and Lil C, we got together and we formed this little crew called the Devastating 3. I was not the best MC at all, and but Jay and Lil C, they were real tight. But we came together and we put together this one little track where we were actually rapping against It's Yours, and it was major. I mean, it was definitely a different thing for me, but it was at that point that I realized that production was something that I really truly was a whole lot better at doing than it was at rhyming, because again, Jay and C were really tight. But again, that kind of set the stage for the production that I would do later, that went from the Sensonics to my next move, which was the Dr. Rhythm. And the Dr. Rhythm helped to define hip hop and what we were doing. But like I said, I'm gonna reach out to Jay. I mean, you remember the whole Devastating 3 thing we were doing?
Yeah, the Devastating 3 was it was like I was already rhyming over existing records, like the instrumental to the breaks, or the first early, couple of rap records. I was already rhyming over those. So I never liked doing it alone. I always wanted somebody, as a support system. I was a little shy and all that. So I would recruit anybody in the neighborhood that would, want to rhyme with me. And Lil C was actually my play cousin at the time. And he was very much into the music just like myself. And we started out just saying, words to popular songs over top of, instrumentals. Then we started to inject our own words. We're talking like 80, 81. And we would start to inject our own little phrases. And then by the time you knew, we were writing actual rhymes on our own. So right around, I guess, 84 or so, that's when TDP, Tyler, came into the scene. And he said he was into music. He had some ties to Connecticut, tape from BLS and that kind of stuff. So the hip hop that we had in common was like a bond for us. And he was a good brother. Me and him, we hit it off well. He mentioned record collecting earlier. So we started that, and I asked him, did he want to rhyme with us? And he came on the track and he rhymed. And I think, I listened to the tape recently, I think it's not as easy as people might think to ride the beat. Like when you go back and look at the NWA movie Straight Outta Compton, how they had to keep recording easy, because it's not that he wasn't necessarily rhythmic, it's just not a natural thing necessarily to be able to ride the beat. And I think he had some problems riding the beat, so we had to do a few takes. And from there, he like you said, he knew that he much rather be behind the boards or behind the drum machines tapping on the pads. But it did start with myself, Lil C, and him. That was the original crew that we had, was the Devastating 3. And again, that was my desire to not be a solo and to have somebody with me to actually do it.
So why did y'all switch from the Devastating 3?
Why we switching the
Yeah, why y'all switch y'all's names?
Yeah, that's a good question. The Devastating 3 thing wasn't really something serious. It was just something to listen to, and we didn't think that the neighborhood would and you know, our schoolmates would pick up to it like they did. They really they saw it as something a lot more serious than what we saw it as. We weren't really trying to start a crew or anything, but just something fun to do. And from there, I think, in fact, I know, Lucy was really into the music, but he wasn't passionate about it. It was just something to do for him. So he had other things going on, you know, whether it was football, girls. I mean, we all had that stuff, but the music was always on the front burner for me. Even at a point, school was on the back burner, and music was on the front burner. I think for all of us at one point. Yeah. So he went on to pursue the other things that, you know, young men at that time would pursue. And for myself, I continued to rhyme, and eventually, you know, that'll come out in the story later. Again, always wanting to have some kind of partner. And I kind of straddled being solo and having a partner all throughout the whole career of the First Sons, 2 Def Crew, and all the crews we had. And then TDP again.
And I just think it just grew into, you know what I mean, we just went into different areas, I mean, different channels of I just think it grew, we just went into different areas and different channels of music that we just kind of grew to. I mean, Jay was always right. I mean, and as far as writing is concerned, writing wasn't something that I always did. I was always into, you know, the instrumental side of it. As I indicated earlier, I played the saxophone, but then I moved from playing the saxophone and moved over to actually playing the drums. So I just think it was a natural progression into the different areas that, you know, we actually have more of a love for. Jay was a writer, and as I indicated, I enjoyed doing the production. And when I started playing in the band and really truly started getting into the whole percussion side of it, I realized that, again, rhyming wasn't something that I really truly wanted to do. I mean, it was, you know, programming beats, playing drums.
What's up? My name is Devon Mecca, aka MC Devon of the 2 Def Crew / First Sons. Yo, we out here on this beautiful day with some of the remnants of the 2 Def Crew, First Sons right here, T.Wizz.J, Jaquan, Microphone Pharaoh, Devon Mecca, aka MC Devon, and we just out here just record some of our history, you know. And I just want to start by saying that when I moved down here in the 80s, hip hop was very limited in Virginia. There wasn't too many cats in Richmond doing hip hop, you know. And these guys were some of among the first that I've seen myself doing hip hop. And I gotta be honest, I moved down here in the 80s. I wasn't too into the hip hop thing because sometimes, you know, coming from Brooklyn, New York, you tend to take things for granted when you're in the middle of it. I had to step outside of it to realize how much I missed it. And when I got down here, man, these guys, they were doing it. They was on it. So I said, you know, how can I, you know, I miss New York physically, but I wanted to get back, you know, somehow, you know, like to New York, you know. And I did it through these guys, man. So I had to, you know, like, I got into hip hop because I missed it. Started writing rhymes. I wasn't the greatest MC, you know. I couldn't even format my rhymes. I didn't even know how to write my rhymes in bars. I knew how to say it, but I didn't know how to format it. I learned that from Jay. I learned that from Ice and Jay. T.Wizz, the original beat maker right here, with the beats and the bass lines off the Dr. Rhythm and all that. You know, I eventually got into it. You know, big shout out to S&D, Scratch Master D, who couldn't be here. Our DJ, one of the best in Southside Richmond, if not the best. Like I said, you know, I got into hip hop, MCing, and as time went on, I got better and better. You know, what made me want to pick the mic up was Run, and I was on a party rhyme thing, and my joints wasn't too sophisticated because I was patterning my rhyme style after Run, where Jay had already moved on to cats like LL, and, you know, whose vocabulary became more extensive. But when Rakim came on the scene, that changed all that for me. I grew up in New York, like I said. My older cousins went into the 5%, and so Rakim was like coming back home for me. So I started patterning my rhyme style after Rakim, and I started reading more, learning more words, you know, like Malcolm X did, learning the dictionary, learn what this word mean, learn what that word mean, trying to string my rhyme flow. And I think I improved as time went on. You know?
Yeah, he definitely did improve as time went on. In fact, you know, it's like the planets aligned a little bit. All of us even coming together. As I tell the story a lot, I was telling T.Wizz the other day, I was a connector in a lot of ways for these brothers.
The cello.
Yeah, you know, like a lot of us, we wouldn't have been friends necessarily because our personalities outside of the group.
And like Jay said, I mean, he pretty much was the conduit for a lot of what we were doing. Pat was coming from New York. I was coming from down south, from South Carolina, and Jay was already in Richmond, right smack in the middle, where we are right now.
Right.
And again, I mean, I came up, definitely was interested, you know, in hip hop, learned a lot about it through him. Definitely heard a lot about Divine through Jay, and from a production perspective, I mean, we just gelled. I mean, we you know, I was definitely interested in the beats. And that was really truly my forte. That was where I really truly wanted to be. And these guys right here, they were running the rhymes. I mean, and when you consider the level of proficiency that they were using and the words and a lot of the different metaphors that they were using at the time, you know, they were definitely ahead of their time. And that was something that I definitely wanted to be a part of. We did a lot together, a lot of good music together, maintained some friendships. But as Jay indicated, I mean, the one thing that really drew us together was just a love of hip hop. And I don't think, if it wasn't for that, he's absolutely correct. There probably wouldn't have been any type of friendship. But because we had that level of love for hip hop, everything else just kind of fell in place, and just, you know, allowed the group to develop and progress the way that it had. And it definitely was a blessing to be around those guys. I learned a lot from them, as I indicated, even though I wasn't around. I learned a lot about the whole philosophy and concept behind rhyming. And when it came down to me developing beats, they had a whole lot of input in it, and were able to pull together a lot of nice tracks for 2 Def at the time.
And this guy, I mean, with the beats and the bass lines, I mean, I'm talking about like early days of like Mantronics and, you know, I mean, he was coming up with original bass lines, you know, and things like that. So when y'all talk about Pharrell and Timbaland and all of that, yo, you got to put T.Wizz.J up in that, you know, because I couldn't make beats. You know what I'm saying? I don't think Jay was really big on the beat making at that time because he was perfecting his MC craft. Right. That's something that came later, you know. And I really have to stress, I think where my attitude came from is not only being from Brooklyn, but I gotta say that, yo, it is no myth when I tell you that growing up in the 70s and the 80s, a lot of guys in New York was into the Bruce Lee thing to the point to where the Bruce Lee and the martial arts thing to the point to where it infiltrated hip hop even in the beginning. And before Wu-Tang, man, I mean, you had the Furious Five Deadly Venoms, you know, things like that, you know, Poison Clan, you know, things like that. And the Grandmasters, you know, Grandmaster Melly Mel, Grandmaster Cass, 7 Grandmasters, you know, things like that. And, you know, it's a correlation with hip hop and martial arts because Bruce Lee in particular was a revolutionary. And we were coming off of the Black Panther movement in the 70s. So when I'm 9 and 10 years old, you know, I'm into martial arts and kung fu, learning from guys that was 20. Now, mind you, these guys were Black Panthers, you know, so you had to learn martial arts and all of that growing up in New York because it was not only a revolutionary thing, but to protect your ass. So I had to put that out there, you know. Big connection.
Definitely. That's very good points. And to add on, you know, he was talking about T.Wizz.J, the beats and the bass lines early.
Right.
I remember we used to make songs in my room, we make songs in Scratch Master D's room, and we would be in his room. You know, we were all still at home. And he had the keyboard set up, the Casio keyboard and things like that. Yeah. Not only was he...
And you had that sample, that Casio sample.
I sure did. The very first one.
Yeah.
But what this brother would do, instead of just making a beat, he was a beat programmer. And there's a difference between just making a, you know, kick, snare,
right,
you know, type of beat.
Right.
He was actually programming the drum machine,
right,
having the hi-hats go backwards, and like he said earlier, he would read the manual to see how to really program the drum machine. So he was way ahead of his time on that. And I got songs at home where he was actually playing keyboard bass lines for the hook. So there was no reason that,
original bass lines.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
We were ahead of our time in a lot of ways. The barriers that kept us from really doing what we needed to do was the fact that we were in Virginia and there was not yet, you know, now you got, you know, your Missy and all of them came and blew things up, and, you know, it's different times, but almost 30 years ago when we were doing this, in fact, 30 years ago, we were doing this, there was no outlets. The NWA hadn't even happened yet.
Right.
There was no West Coast. There was no Dirty South. You know, it was only New York artists making it. There's no business structure here in Virginia, especially in Richmond, Virginia, to help promote it.
And to add on to that, it's funny that he brought that up with Missy Elliott and Timberland, and the reason that they were able to blow up is because when in the 80s, when singers like Teddy Riley and producers like Teddy Riley, when they got money, before everybody started going to Atlanta, they would come into Virginia Beach.
That's right.
So we started holding the Battle of the Beats contest and everything. So Pharrell, Timberland, it's a matter of geographics. And had Teddy Riley landed here in Richmond, I mean, it could have been us. Yeah, I mean, exactly. You know, so that's what that is. It's a matter of geographics, you know, because we black creativity is everywhere, you know. So just like, you know, hip hop started in the North, soul music started in the South. So wherever you got black people, you have creativity, period, especially in America. We the most innovative, you know, most imitated ever. The trendsetters. We decide what's what. I don't care who invades the culture, we say what's what. And, you know, that's what it is right there. You know, you can't kill this energy right here. It just takes another form.
Every time.